up with the NFL Final Four coming up this weekend, but Joe Burrow coming off what might have been the greatest season in college football history. And there's some speculation out there, based upon the history of struggles in Cincinnati, that Burrow might consider trying to strong-arm his way out of becoming a Bengal. But in an interview on a Montreal TSN radio affiliate, his dad, Jimmy Burrow, said otherwise. He said, quote, he's excited to even be in that conversation. If the Bengals do draft him, he's going to be happy. You've probably seen some of his interviews. He's very confident. He'll look at it as a challenge, but he'll be confident that eventually they can win a lot of games there in Cincinnati. Bobby Carpenter, again, you are an Ohio guy yourself, and you actually have a good relationship with Jimmy Burrow, the dad. What can you tell us?
Yeah, my brother played for Jim for 5 years at Ohio University, and you're texting back and forth with him and talking with him throughout the season. Like, this doesn't seem like it's a reality for Joe. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go in there and try to force his way and dictate where he is going to play. And frankly, talking to his dad, like, he lives 3.5 hours away. He's like, where would be a better place for me to go to be able to stay in the same place and go visit and watch my son play football games? So it makes a lot of sense on a lot of angles. I understand Cincinnati necessarily hasn't been the most glamorous place and the best place treating quarterbacks lately, but I think for him, this is going to be the destination if they want it to be.
When you think about Joe Burrow's Heisman speech that he said off the cuff, by the way, that obviously brought a lot of great money and donations into Southeast Ohio, an area that's really important to him, it seems pretty far-fetched to think that this might happen. But the reason why everybody's talking about this, Dan, is because Joe Brady, his offensive coordinator, goes to the Panthers. People think, could they be teamed up somehow? Yeah. And maybe do you see a scenario where the Bengals want to get a king's ransom for Joe Burrow?
I've said this. If the Bengals trade out the #1 pick, Roger Goodell needs to make it a 31-team league, because they got gifted the most important position with one of its best players we've seen in a long time. I mean, even if Miami comes to them and goes, hey, Miami has 3 first-round picks. Even if Miami goes to them and says, here's our 3 first-rounders, give us the #1 pick, Cincinnati should say no. First of all, their head coach, Zach Taylor, kind of grew up around Jared Goff. Joe Burrow's got some Jared Goff kind of maneuverability within the pocket. Their offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, loves Matthew Stafford, just the personality of Matthew Stafford. Joe Burrow's got a little Matthew Stafford in him. He's got like some guy's guy in him. So this is the easiest pick the Bengals have ever made when it comes to the NFL
I have
draft.
2 questions for Louis Riddick as a person who has been in a front office capacity. The first is, if you are the general manager in Cincinnati, are you even answering the phone? Are you taking phone calls? And what would it have to take for you to extend the conversation?
Well, I think it would be, the decision you would have to make is whether or not the next best alternative is something you feel could really still allow you to build out your program and be a Super Bowl contender. I know that sounds ridiculous talking about the Bengals, but they did make it to the Super Bowl at one point in time. Just remember that. Twice, as a matter of fact. So that's what I'd have to consider. It would have to be a king's ransom. It would have to involve multiple #1 draft picks. And again, it'd have to be where I could still feel as though I was in position to take the next best alternative. The only thing I will say, though, is this, as far as Cincinnati is concerned. We're talking about Joe Burrow like he's just going to come in like a ready-made, answer. Yep. The responsibility is on the Cincinnati Bengals to make sure that they make sure everything is airtight in their organization so they do not waste this kid. We've seen it happen way too many times.
Yeah, Dio, I have to disagree with you, because if I'm the Bengals, one quarterback in Joe Burrow without the other pieces that they so desperately need isn't going to save the day. I mean, they're bottom 5 defensively. You can have the best offense in the world, but remember, the top 5 passing offenses this year, none of them made the playoffs. Sure. So you can have the best offense, the most explosive, et cetera. The Bengals need a lot more pieces. So if it is a king's ransom, then I think you can make a move.
But you also look at this with what the Bengals have done with their last drafting of quarterbacks really high. Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, both of those guys made Pro Bowls throughout their career. They did develop an offensive line around them. They drafted Jonah Williams out of Alabama last year. He'll be back. Right. And so it's not necessarily the weapons. To me, for a young quarterback, it's always about the protection and can you keep them upright.
I will also just throw at you the notion that if they were to trade back and get the proverbial king's ransom, and part of that is what remains a high first-round draft pick, I don't know how different the grade they might have is between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, or Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa. So it feels at least to me like something you would have to consider if the phone is ringing off the hook.
I think that those coaches in that organization are going to value the leadership, the aspect of leadership that Joe Burrow has displayed. And that's the biggest question with a guy like a Justin Herbert, right? Can you be a dude? Can you run an organization the way we saw Joe Burrow step into LSU and become the focal point?
But real quick, Dan, the question surrounding Joe Burrow is we haven't seen Joe Burrow successful without Joe Brady. And so to Greeny's whole point, full picture is Joe Burrow dominated and he lit up all of college football, but we haven't seen him dominate without Joe Brady.
The last half of last season, though, he was really
coming on.
Good.
Yeah. There's always a lot of unknown with these young quarterbacks. There's no way you can just take the situation he had at LSU and just bring it to the pros. That's why it's just imperative on this organization in particular, and guys like the great Steve Young talk about all the time, you do not want to get caught in the wrong circle as far as an organization is concerned. Your career will go down the drain in a hurry.
SportsCenter coming your way tonight, 6 Eastern after PTI. It'll be Sage and Zubin Mehenti. They will have the Conor McGregor Cowboys Cerrone live weigh-in. They'll have Woj with the latest big-name NBA trade buzz, and they will have Titans, Chiefs, and Packers 49ers picks by a panel of NFL experts at SportsCenter on ESPN and the ESPN app right after PTI.
Let's get to the NBA. We go to the Bucks and Celtics, and Jay Will is in the building to talk about this one. Giannis, of course, and his Bucks doing their pregame ritual, which they do all the time. It's the nightly fake fight in the hallway. Anyway, let's get to the getting hot early for the Bucks. Giannis, unbelievable, slamming it home there, Jay.
Yeah, this is a big-time play by Brandon Ingram, a play that actually before the clock dwindles out, gives him a 2-point lead. This is the player who Brandon Ingram has become this season, averaging 25 points, shooting 40% from the three-point line.
We see Zion on the bench, excited there, and another opportunity there. So here's what got weird. The play was under review. Jay, take it away here.
If this happened the last time these two teams played, Derek Favors hooks Rudy Gobert. The refs call it at the end. I don't think they should have made the call. Rudy Gobert misses the first free throw, but then steps up, Laura, makes his second to send it into overtime.
So obviously, I thought that we were doing a Bucks-Celtics highlight.
It happens.
We're not.
It's okay.
We're doing this instead, and we're going to keep adjusting. So here's overtime between these two teams. The Pelicans and the Jazz trying to see who's going to get this one. And what happened here, Jay?
Oh, it goes up, it gets an and-one. Look, the Pelicans are one of the best teams when they actually are at full force. This team has talent, and Donovan Mitchell had one heck of a game, 49 points, but the end just wasn't enough.
Well, here's Alvin Gentry talking about the way that this whole thing ended up. Take it away.
What did the officials say at the end of regulation?
They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. It's no, they didn't say anything.
Okay.
What do you think about it?
Will you pay the fine? If you'll pay the fine, I'll tell you exactly how I think about it.
Smart move.
Yeah, so he doesn't want to talk because he doesn't want to pay the fine, but fun stuff from Alvin Gentry there. Okay, here's the thing about Brandon Ingram. Everyone thinks about him, and it's been a little bit of a slow rise for him in his career, but how does getting away from LeBron James actually help Ingram have success?
Well, I think when he was at LeBron, there was a lot of pressure on Brandon Ingram, and there were also trade rumors about him potentially being packaged to get a guy like Anthony Davis. That did inevitably happen, but people forget, Brandon Ingram is only 22 years old, okay? He's averaging 25 points, shooting 40% from the field. Not everybody is a LeBron James. Not everybody is a Zion Williamson who come in right away and just dominate. Think about his first year in the league, Laura. It was coming off a season in which Swaggy P and D-Lo had that whole issue about D-Lo calling out Swaggy P and his wife and all this stuff. Like, that was the maturity level of that team he was on in his first year. Second and third year, he was plagued by injuries. This is the first year that we're actually seeing Brandon Ingram healthy, and we're seeing the potential of how good he can be. I mean, and a lot of people were also talking about the fact that potentially when the draft came out, that he should be drafted over Ben Simmons at that time too, which gives you insight into how special of a talent he could be.
So we're still waiting on Zion to come back for this Pelicans team, but they're going to be a team that can be in the playoffs. You've already said that they're going to be in there. How do you manage Zion knowing that you're trying to make a run, but also trying to keep him healthy?
Pitch count. And it's a lot of constant communication between David Griffin and their staff and Zion about where he is, how his body feels. We had a bet at the beginning of the season, myself and Greeny, with Jalen Rose, that we thought the Pelicans were going to make the playoffs at full strength and full health. If Zion Williamson is able to plug himself back into this equation for short stints, this team does have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they're only 4 or 5 games out of contention for the 8th seed. Lonzo Ball had 13 assists last night. Brandon Ingram is playing well. Derek Favors is protecting the rim. JJ Redick is shooting the ball well. They have all the pieces if they get the momentum from Zion in burst.
All right, so obviously I really wanted us to see this Celtics-Bucks highlight. I was so excited about it that we tried to start there. But let's get to it now. 2 of the best teams in the East, and the Bucks are hosting the Celtics. There's the pregame fight, the fake fight. Hey, the Bucks got hot early. There's Giannis slamming it home.
The Bucks are the deepest team in the NBA. I know a lot of people can say, how about the Clippers? But the Clippers in their bench is still decent. I love this team. They can beat you in so many facets of the game, shooting threes, and they have a lot of guys that can put the ball on the ground and make plays, and also guys that can play off of Giannis.
Lopez had 3 threes in the first quarter alone, and then we're going to see under a minute and 30 left. The Celtics were making a comeback in this game.
They were. The Celtics are a team that fights. Kemba Walker, look at that. Blazing speed in transition. This is a duel. But I will say this. We still talk about the Clippers or the Lakers being one of the favorites to win the whole thing. We got to talk about the Bucks being one of the favorites. They're that good of a team.
Yeah, they're going to continue to be a team that we're going to look out for there. And here in the final moments, under 20 seconds remaining, could they get it done? Marcus Smart is going to have an opportunity, but not quite enough for him at the end. The Celtics comeback falls short, so the Bucks win this one 128-123. Giannis had 32 points, 17 rebounds, 7 assists. What a game for them. Okay, our NBA Friday doubleheader tips off at 7 Eastern with the Bulls and 76ers.
Come on,
then
Bulls, give me a win.
We'll take you to Dallas for Luka Doncic and the Mavs, hosting Damian Lillard and the Trail Blazers right here on ESPN and the ESPN app. Much more coming your way on Get Up as we get back to baseball. 3 up, 3 down as Carlos Beltran is the 3rd manager forced out from baseball's cheating scandal. What is next? We'll be back on Get Up.